Most people wait until something's wrong to see a doctor. You are not most people. I'm Kevin White. After more than 20 years as an emergency physician, I realized the best medicine is not waiting for the crash. It's helping people stay on the road. This is The Daily Apple, a podcast about living better, longer. Every episode gives you something you can use this week, a smarter habit, a clearer path, or maybe just a new way to think about your health. Because engaged patients are the best patients, and your best years do not have to be behind you. Let's get into it.
Welcome back to The Daily Apple. I am with the one and only Katie Hardy, a Colorado-based board-certified holistic nutritionist, strength and conditioning specialist, works with athletes, high performers, especially skiers, athletes, on dialing in nutrition, recovery, lifestyle, so they can actually feel, look, and perform their absolute best. We're also going to delve into the perimenopausal world as well. But we're going to talk about how to build real energy without leaning on caffeine and other things. How nutrition changes across the lifespan, especially for women in perimenopause, and what it looks like to eat and live like a high-performing athlete in the real world. So without further delay, welcome, Katie. Good to have you here. Thanks for being here, making time.
Thanks for having me, Kevin.
Yeah. So did I include everything in there? Or is there anything I'm missing there that you do? Okay, cool. First off, so you're there in Winter Park is where you live. So life is hard in Winter Park and it's gorgeous there. Really jealous. But tell me how you got started in this space. Tell me kind of your origin story and what brought you to where you are today.
Yeah, well, we didn't chat about this the other day, but I actually have always been interested in performance. I was kind of one of those weird kids. Did you guys have the Presidential Fitness Challenge tests? Like the pull-ups, pull-ups, smile run, sprint, or shuttle run, all those things?
George Bush in Iowa at that time.
Okay, yeah. So that came out, or at least I was introduced in like third grade, and didn't know what any of these things were. But once we went through the first round of tests, I was like, I got to practice for these because I was actually, I got the record in the pull-ups. So I was like, oh, cool. Like, let's keep doing this. And I'd always recruit my parents to help train for the mile because I get really anxious. I wouldn't get the time I'd want. And they actually diagnosed me with exercise-induced asthma. Now, in hindsight, I realized it was probably anxiety, like performance-related anxiety, which is a whole nother thing that, I ended up doing performance psychology. But I always loved those types of outlets and so would want to train for it. And so I'd ask for a pull-up bar for my birthday when I was really little and would just, had that interest in discipline to want to train. And that continued through high school, wanting to take on nutrition. But, as we were talking, the resources there were kind of different, just not having it as accessible internet. And so it was kind of through whatever magazine you got at the time, which was go for that white bread and cereal and jam, but don't touch the peanut butter because it's high fat. The avocados are high fat. Like meat's terrible. You're going to die if you eat it, that sort of thing. So I had a lot of lean cuisines and bowls of cereal, like all of high school and really into college because I didn't really know how to cook. And that kind of took me, everybody in my family was in some sort of medical or dental field. So those were the options presented. And so went down that coursework route, but then realized that wasn't totally the lifestyle maybe I was looking for. And so in a roundabout way, got a lot of the same backgrounds through strength and conditioning, nutrition, coaching, culinary school, lab testing, functional lab testing, blood, urine, stool, saliva, and kind of formed my own curriculum to do what I'm doing now because I was one of those people who wanted a plan specific for me because I felt like there was something really cool I could do. It just, following the general plans just didn't feel like it was like, oh, walk more, eat less, maybe do more cardio. And it wasn't specific. And I'm like, well, I'm already doing that. So then you just do it more. And then you kind of find yourself overtraining, under recovering, not having a specific plan, like a goal that you're working toward. And so you just keep doing more and more and more. And eventually, your body doesn't tolerate that as well as it did in its 20s. And so 30s probably okay, but it starts sneaking up, maybe mid to later 30s into your 40s. And then of course that kind of coincides with perimenopause, which they never tell you about, like that can actually start having some impacts around age 35 through 50. So that's kind of the roundabout way I got into this, and basically kind of teaching the whole picture of the, diet, conditioning, but recovery, because that was never a thing we talked about or really respected, and how when you look at that whole picture, it can not just improve your physical performance, but mental focus, emotional balance, all the things can positively be impacted. So if your performance is on the slopes or the field or at the corporate world or in, being a family member, parent, kid, spouse, you name it.
You'd mentioned, let's just dive into the perimenopause. We'll just get right in there. So, you work with a lot of female athletes, and obviously things start to change, 40s and all that sort of stuff. Women move into that stage. What are some things that they're not being told? What are some most common mistakes that you might see with, with perimenopausal female athletes or just individuals trying to stay healthy and active? What do you see as common mistakes they make with nutrition and training that they need to think about?
Yeah, I think the biggest one that we've all been taught and maybe programmed is the calories in versus calories out is the only component to the equation. And what that skips is the hormones, right? And so what worked in your 30s and maybe 30s all of a sudden no longer works, late 30s, 40s, 50s. And so people are told, well, and I hear this all the time, where they're starting to get little midsection weight, and then whoever they're seeing is like, well, just work out more or eat less. Well, they've already been doing that. So when you do the same thing harder, what is it doing? It's putting your body in more of a stress state. And when it's stressed, it's telling your body, hang on to resources, because, you have that same physiological response, whether you're in a physical threat situation or just thinking about something from 15 years ago. And so what that's telling your body to do is hang on, because we don't know when that next source of food is going to be available. And so you start hanging on to it, and it starts showing up in the midsection, and people start getting a little anxious, like, ooh, don't like how those jeans are fitting, or, get the little tricep like waggle when they wave. And so, let's sign up for a half marathon or do some more cardio. And because that's going to burn more calories, right? Or let's, we heard about the time restricted eating and the fasted state benefits. Let's skip breakfast. And then, they're kind of skipping out on protein needs for the day. So they're starting their day off in a stress state, and their body does not feel safe. So it's hanging on harder. So the same thing that either worked before or does actually work in a short term, when you try to do it forever, it stops producing those same benefits it used to. So that's probably the biggest thing I see.
So by the stress and the high cortisol levels and all that stuff, we're not talking about necessarily mental stress, so that can be part of it, but it's the training more and more and not giving yourself ample recovery time is what I'm hearing you say. And up there, I know patients and friends that do even the ultra marathons and don't allow appropriate recoveries. Talk about, as we're staying on the perimenopausal thing, or even it could be anybody, but we'll just stick with the perimenopausal stuff for a while. Like you said, it's harder to lose that weight in the midsection if you don't allow recovery time to take yourself out of that stress state and get into the more the parasympathetic kind of thing. How do you work with people to get them to kind of switch on or switch off?
Yeah. Well, and you actually said something when you said it's not just the mental stress. You kind of have that stress bucket where, it is the mental stress, it is the physical stress. And what's kind of ironic that I was for sure guilty of is not recognizing that physical training, the reason you get adaptations and responses is because it is a stressor. And you need that stressor with the appropriate recovery to get that training response you're looking for with, faster speed, bigger muscles, whatever the goal is. And so when we don't recognize that physical outlet that we might be using to take out our mental and emotional stressors is compounding that whole stress bucket, that's part of where we can get into trouble, because a lot of times those additional workouts aren't really part of a thought out plan for a specific goal. And so then it ends up just being more volume. or more, right? Because you're like, oh, I'm pissed off or I'm stressed or whatever the thing, I'm just going to go run. And I used to do this all the time before I understood what hormones really did and the impact. And so that was your way of being free, right? You feel good. You get the endorphin high. You get an escape. You don't feel all the things. You don't have to think about all the things. So it's a natural response. And it can be done in a healthy way if it's part of kind of a pre-designed program and you use that intensity or fuel to pick up the heavier weights, push it a little faster on the speed or, sprint training intervals, whatever you're doing. It's when it's just arbitrary. It's like, oh, I'm going to go run 7 miles and I'm going to do it again tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And it's just, you're pounding the pavement without a strategy. And I think that's more where people get in, or you follow kind of the same training plan that is made for a 20-year-old. And then you have a 55-year-old following it, and you have very different recovery needs at different ages, even women, whether they're cycling, first half of the cycle, back half of the cycle, just, the things you need for the hormone production are going to vary. And that's why men can have a lot of success with the fasted workouts, whereas women, especially, depending on their age and where they are in the cycle, can have a very different response to it. And so those would be some of the big differences.
So you bake in some recovery periods for women or athletes in general, I assume, in your thought out plans. Okay.
And I call it sleep is kind of one of our least utilized ergogenic aids. It's free, and now there's finally a bunch of studies out there on the performance differences in immune differences following several shorter night sleeps and several more appropriate longer night sleeps, and how that really impacts your training, your immunity, your resilience. And I don't know if you've noticed doing different or doing similar workouts after different quality night sleeps, but I know like I still like doing pull-ups, but on those days that I do them, if I've had a crap night's sleep the night prior, I feel 50 pounds heavy. And if I had some solid sleep, couple nights sleeping, I feel like I can just keep, ripping those out. And so same with speed work, you're like, oh, my legs don't feel so heavy. And so that's a sign of under recovery. And this is something with really driven people who are used to being overachievers, overperformers, overdoers. When you say they're overtraining, they're like, yeah, I am. That's a good thing, right? Because I'm going above and beyond. Whereas if you kind of reframe it as I'm under recovering, you're not hitting the mark. You're not hitting the mark. And I got into trouble with this when I was training for an Ironman. And then I was still teaching all these classes, these weights classes and HIIT classes at the gym. Because you're like back in that mentality of, oh, well, if this, is good, more is better, certainly, right? Like just keep doing more. And I just remember doing an Ironman, like people are like, ooh, an Ironman, that must be so hard. It's actually really easy. You're going at such a slow pace. You could literally do it all day long. It's mentally challenging. It's nutrition challenging. But from a physical standpoint, doing like 100% sprints are way harder. Doing a sprint triathlon, if you're doing it properly, like going all out, is way harder in that moment. There's just fewer of those moments you have to like deal with. So I remember training for this Ironman, and you're supposed to go at this stupid slow pace. And I'm like, I'm zapped. Like my legs feel so heavy. And it's because I was under recovering, overtraining, and I wasn't respecting that your body can actually perform so much better with less volume.
Yeah, that's funny. I've got patients and friends, and I know they overtrain. My patients that do, I know objective data that they're inflamed and they overtrain. But there's this mindset of more is better, more is better. I'm a go-getter, and you're not getting the results that you seek by doing that. So what I'm hearing you say is lose fat. We can just be more lazy, essentially. Right?
Not more lazy, more intentional. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
But look at the body composition, of long distance races. They're not like your most lean people. They're not cut. Like if you look at marathoners now, Olympians are kind of a different category, but I'm talking about your rec person. If you look at people doing a marathon, you see a lot of overfat people doing it. And then I'm like looking at their knees thinking, gosh, that's got to be brutal. And then you look at people who sprint. It's so much harder to sprint and push your body to full capacity, and it's so much more effective with way less volume. save time, save stress, like stressors on the body. So it's like, kind of switching what we're measuring. Instead of measuring minutes or miles, like let's measure like your pace. How fast are you running? Like, are you going over, 12 miles per hour? Or are you like right there at 6 miles per hour? Or what's your incline? Or, like VO2 max, like coming up with different metrics where you're pushing the intensity versus the volume side of the equation. They both can be super important. I think people, because cardio, if you stay in that middle state, is less uncomfortable, people tend to gravitate toward that because we don't like discomfort, right? And that's where all the good stuff comes after, is something that's uncomfortable, whether it's physical or mental.
Yeah. So whenever you're training, actually, before I get into that, can you share a story of a perimenopausal athlete that you worked with, what they might have been struggling with, what you changed and what happened in regards of what we just kind of went over there? I mean, can you think of a
For
story
sure.
there? And if not, we can edit this out. But yeah, you can?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. And this is more than just one person, but I'm thinking of a gal who is kind of in that chronic exerciser category because they're driven, they like doing it, they think that looks good on their body. When we measure their hormones, their cortisol production through a saliva and urine test, so the combination will tell you what your body's producing and then either what it's converting or clearing. And this particular person had a miserably low cortisol production. Just like, how do you get out of bed? Like, just like one of those people. And I'm like, you're probably not going to like, you're either going to love or hate what I'm going to say, but we've got to give more energy to your adrenals. So we're going to pull a lot of that cardio. We can keep the yoga, the mindfulness, we can keep some strength stuff. The cardio is going to go. And people are either like crying because they're like, oh my God, that's my outlet. Or, oh my God, it feels like nice to not feel like I have to do it. Either way, we pull that, we work on some gut stuff, some, just kind of more space in the day and not grinding. Fast forward a little bit, doing less and then actually eating more, like prioritizing solid, savory proteins early in the day and throughout the day versus all the snacking. Because what are snack foods, right? They tend to be sweet, processed, bunch of crap. And so let's start thinking about meals versus constant grazing or snacking, because that was the other thing we were taught back, is the bodybuilding way of eating, eat every 2 to 3 hours. Well, if that's your goal is to put on mass, yes, you do that. But that's not most people's goals in perimenopause. And so we shifted that, and she started getting all these compliments about, wow, what are you doing different with your skin? It looks so much more vibrant and bright, and like you look more toned. She's like, it's the craziest thing. I'm doing less of like the workout stuff, but she's keeping the strength training and eating more, and my body composition's improving, and my energy is like coming back. And then, we started working on the sleep, and, that's also part of the equation. She was now starting to get more restful sleep because instead of needing to get the caffeine pushing, getting you out of bed because your adrenals are so tapped from overtraining, under recovering, then you don't need the wine at night to unwind all the caffeine, and then you sleep at night, and it sets you up for a whole different cycle. And she's just like, this is amazing. Like, I just feel more at peace with my routine. I used to be a maniac, and like those were her words. And she's like, yeah, I would just get up and do 10 miles on the Peloton before my skin or ski or workout or whatever it was. That was like the pre-thing. And so it's kind of like, okay, but what was the training goal of the 10 miles pre the actual workout, right? And a lot of times it's not a conscious decision. It's just the way it's been. Or I used to do 10 and then it creeps up. Let's do 11. Let's do 12. And it just, with no intentional plan, that's just what it becomes. And then it's not necessarily within the month or the year. It's over time that it really starts to dig that hole for the body. And it's going to take a little time to come out too. But that was somebody I was just talking to yesterday. And it was so fun to hear her be like, wow, this has been like life-changing. Like just my whole relationship with everything. I have so much more time, so much more energy. And I'm like, yeah, it's all lifestyle and diet.
Yeah. That's, and of course, yeah, from a vanity standpoint, and your skin looks a lot different too. You kind of touched on that as well. So say more there. Is that something you see a lot as a nutritionist as you work with people?
Yeah. And that's the thing is, whether it's a young athlete or an adult, what's the thing that's important to them? Because when you improve what's going on inside, it's going to show up in so many places. And they're going to hear the compliments or see the results and the thing that matters to them most. And if it's not an athlete, I think, and especially female, but anybody, I think skin's important because it does kind of, we do make a first impression on what we're seeing, and it does kind of tell you what you're seeing on the skin is like reflective of what's going on inside, whether you're starting from the gut or just thinking general inflammation. It does tell you, is there a leaky gut going on? Is there inflammation, redness? Are the nutrients getting where they need to go from the food they're eating? Are they getting a lot of like inflammatory foods like sugars or alcohol or things that are going to, congest the system? How's the liver working and clearing things? So it shows a lot through the skin, how quickly your muscles recover from training, and, how well you sleep. It's all interrelated. So it's more about tapping into what is that important variable for you. Because yes, it's going to help all of them. But as we were mentioning the other day, like teens don't care about health. That is like so far off their radar, but they do care about their skin. They do want to get more quality training sessions in. So the faster you recover, the more of those quality training sessions you can get in the gym or on the mountain or on the field. And the more of those reps you're getting without, like overtraining, the faster you're going to improve. So that's what they care about. But when people are like, eat your veggies, it's helpful, or it's healthy, they don't care. That's like mom and dad telling them something. Now, because it came from mom and dad, I'm definitely not going to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if it helps me recover faster and it's going to help me podium, I'm all about that.
Yeah. Yeah, get on the podium, that's one thing. What they want, I swear, my son, he goes and gets Whataburger all the time. I think it's just to piss me off because here I am, focused on this. This is my life, and I'm trying, we're working with clients and patients and totally turning things around. He's like, they go the different direction. It's like, you're not going to listen to me at all, but it's so funny. Daughters,
they got to figure it out on their own little journey.
I know. So how do you make them care? So that's how you make them care about it, is what they want. And I guess I was going to ask you, why should teens actually care about nutrition?
Yeah.
For yours,
so,
you're working with skiers who are making it to the Olympics. These are hardcore teens. That's their life.
They're not all making it, but they want to.
Yeah.
And when you get at that place, the difference maker is 1% edge here or there. And so you're picking off the mental edge, the nutrition, because the recovery and putting on the muscle. You're getting the sleep dialed. It's the less than 1% is the difference between 3rd and 12th. It's that little. So when they really give a shit about that, they're going to care about their nutrition. And so it's about asking them what's important to you. Like, not me trying to convince them this should be important, but tapping into their internal desires, because we all have something there. There's something that's important to all of us. And my important thing isn't necessarily going to resonate with you or your son or whoever else, but really whatever it is for them. And that's why you're never going to have an athlete, go all the way if it's their parents driving them. It has to come within. And, it's just, they're going to burn out mentally or physically first, if not.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, when you get to that professional level, the difference between, like you said, the 1st and the 10th or 12th, that's a hairline difference. I mean, these aren't huge.
Because they're all awesome on paper at that point. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're all super talented. So, the kids who are naturally gifted can kind of cruise control for a while. It's actually the ones who don't start off that way, who learn how to have that discipline, because that discipline you learn earlier on gives you that freedom later. So same, whether it's with conditioning, whether it's with nutrition, hydration, sleep, having boundaries and holding those when you're tempted to do some of the other things that might not be in alignment with your best recovery and performance in this area. And so that's what's tricky. That's why you have to really love it or have that clear focus. And it doesn't have to just be athletics. It can be with work. It can be just being in the best version of you, possible. It's being pretty crystal clear on like why that is important.
Yeah. And that can be for not only athletes, but just mental sharpness, mental clarity, and even a teen who isn't like a hardcore athlete, just for hormones and all the things that you want to be working well and thinking sharply and all that sort of stuff, just to have that, think about nutrition like fuel, like you wouldn't put water in your gas tank, you'd put good quality gas in your gas tank. Anyway,
back to kind of what you're saying, or we were talking about earlier with the calories in, calories out, that, I guess, equation's gotten tossed around a lot. And that's why I think so many people think, oh, it's just about getting the right number of calories in or the right number of macros in. Yes, there is an energy component. There is a macro component. And I would say we all have variations on what that macro distribution looks like that best fuels each of us. Part of it's our individual differences. Part of it's our sport demands or our activity demands. And the thing that the equation also doesn't account for, in addition to the hormone piece, is the quality of the nutrients, because our body isn't only looking for energy, it's looking for the actual building blocks it needs. So the amino acids to produce the sex hormones, the digestive enzymes, the immune cells, the structures of our cell walls. You need those fatty acids, the essential fatty acids, and you need cholesterol. And for that to get demonized is actually compromising the structure of our cells, which can affect your skin and, the integrity of the organs and everything. So I think parts of our sports nutrition industry has also gotten pretty swayed with the big food sports nutrition, quote unquote. And it's really more simple than that. It's real food. It's getting real nutrients in. Sometimes we try to overcomplicate it with let's measure everything and it needs to be in this bag so we can measure it. But at the end of the day, it's real food with actual nutrients, not fake stuff with just calories.
Real food. I want to dive down into, that woman that you were talking about, that you were working with, that you pulled away the cardio, you dropped the stress, you kept the lean muscle, resistance training going on, you changed your diet, protein in the morning. Kind of give me an example of how you changed her day. You took out the all the snacking and stuff in between, but you made kind of satiating, good quality meals throughout the day. Give me an example of what you made her day look like, just from a dietary standpoint. Because I know I talk to this all the time. I've got women who are in their 40s and they can't lose their midsection, and we're working with stuff like this. That would be
what does that look like in the day?
Yeah. Give me an example.
So thinking of breakfast as savory, because most savory things are a little more protein focused versus sweet carb focused. I think our American breakfast is essentially dessert the way we do it. And there's very little protein. Now the marketers have gotten really great about making protein ice cream and protein chips and all these things. It's still junk food. It's still processed. But if you're thinking about savory breakfast in the terms of starting your plate or your bowl around what's the protein, it could be eggs, it could be sausage, it could literally be leftovers from dinner the night prior, because I think most people put the most effort into dinner versus lunch or breakfast. So make extra dinner, make it easy on yourself, and just reheat it, or throw some eggs on top of leftover dinner if you want it to feel more breakfast-like. But something savory. If you're kind of one of those people who like more of that traditional, maybe oatmeal, think savory. So let's throw some eggs or sausage or avocado versus maple syrup and, fruit and all the things that are sweeter. So think savory, because you're going to probably get more protein. It could be ground breakfast sausage. It could be ground any sort of meat protein that you like, but something simple for example, this morning I had it was chorizo. Sometimes it's Italian sausage. Chorizo, sliced onions, and poblano peppers. 3 ingredients. Boom. And then roasted some sweet potatoes to kind of fill in some carbs. A little bit more carbs. It's super fast. I make it while, we're just kind of getting ready, and it doesn't take much hands-on time. And you make a big enough batch that you could also have it for lunch. You could also have it for dinner. You can have it tomorrow for breakfast. So it's really quick. If some people don't like eggs, right? Or have sensitivities to it. If you like eggs, I like making egg bakes ahead of time. So throw in some sliced kale or onions or bacon on top, whatever things you like. But, just have something ahead of time. So those are a few ideas. Dinner leftovers, some egg bakes. I'll cook up extra squash or veggies. So I'm thinking winter squash this time of year, acorn squash, butternut squash, pumpkins. Those are all in that category. And that can be your carb, because a lot of times people think carbs, it needs to be bread or pasta. those are processed, so that's not going to help your waistline. Sorry, it's just not. And this is coming from somebody who like pretty much lived off of bread and beer for a long, long time. So I get it. Like I could not imagine a meal without a bunch of milk, a bunch of bread, and then like, happy hour only being beer. So I get it because I loved those things and they don't necessarily love me back. So you don't need bread, you don't need pasta, and you can have a very carbohydrate fulfilling existence, and your gut can slim down and all the inflammation can go down. So you get enough protein or satiation in the morning that it should carry you forward, 4, 5, 6 hours before you feel the need to snack. And if you feel the need to snack, it's not like there's something wrong with your willpower. It's, hey, there was something about that last meal or the way I ate the meal that isn't giving my cells what it needs as far as the actual building blocks. And I'm not talking calories, because I could have 2,000 calories of white rice, and that's more than enough calories for my breakfast, and still feel like something was missing because my body wants more protein. I need amino acids. I need some fat. I need something that's going to not just spike and drop my blood sugar. And so it isn't as simple as what's the number of calories in this thing, but like, what is your body telling you for feedback that it got or didn't get? And so we're trying to find something at breakfast that carries us at minimum 3 hours before you even think about food. And that's tricky for a lot of people because they're so used to like snacking, standing and walking around while they're making their kids lunches or working and not like being present with the food. So actually put some effort into the meal and then pack a lunch. So, if you're making rice or you're making roasted potatoes or you're making chicken thighs, make enough to last multiple meals, because no one loves cleaning up after every single meal. That's annoying. So like if you're going to like pull everything out, do it one time and have it like carry you through a little bit. And then for dinner, it's, I like to think about what's the protein, what are your veggies. This is where everybody varies what type and how much of the carbohydrate to fill in. I like all the macros, but I like them in whole food forms, so if we're doing like steak and then maybe rotate in, think about like the land, the sea, the air. So even though chickens don't really fly, but like that's kind of your poultry category. But then land being like beef or pork, but then the sea, some sort of seafood. So you're getting a variety of protein inputs. And then veggies, same thing, have some variety in the colors, because each color is going to have some different antioxidants or nutrients that are going to support different processes. So rather than like, does it have this exact nutrient or micronutrient? Just think variety in proteins, variety in colors, a variety in spices. Keep it interesting. Like, keep it simple, keep it interesting. We don't need to overcomplicate it, because most people are like, oh, let's like, how much of, the collagen or how much of this particular nutrient do I need? Like, I'm like, we need to start with the basic, like, let's just start with like meals, before we start worrying about like the different supplements or the nutrients in this package of something. Like, start with a meal, protein, veggies, whatever type of real carbohydrates. And veggies are carbohydrates. Fruits are carbohydrates.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I like to look at it.
Then potato chips. We're talking about.
What's that?
We're not talking about about a can of Pringles.
Totally.
We're talking
because when you get those meals dialed, you actually lose the need to snack. Snacking means our bodies didn't get the right ratio, the right types, or the right amount of what it needed at the last meal, or we just have a really long time. Because sometimes people's schedules, they're eating lunch at 11, they don't eat dinner till 6 or 7. Then that would be an appropriate amount of time to need to pop in a little snack or something in between, or have a fourth mini meal. So yes, it's about thinking about meals. Yeah.
I've said that too to our clients, is making it easy, like what you just said. Cook a little bit extra at dinner. You use that the next day. You throw it in your salad or whatever, and you whip it up, and you make it where it's not an effort. If you can lower the effort, you can make it sustainable. I will say that whenever I personally kind of changed my whole way of thinking about 10 or 12 years ago or whatever it was just, you go to the end of the day and you think, wow, I felt really great because I didn't eat garbage at all. So yeah, check the way you feel afterwards. Then you're kind of addicted to it, and it's easy to do.
Yeah.
So I will say, so you've seen inside the life of like a lot of athletes, a lot of these people. That's been your life's work. How has all this changed the way you live day to day? Like, what's that look like for you?
Well,
And we can
if
edit this
anybody
out if
knew
you
me
want.
and was
Yeah.
that?
And we can edit this out if you want to.
If anybody knew me in my yeah, no, I'm very different now in some respects than I was in my teens and 20s. I guess like I was mentioning, everything was pretty like processed carb focused, heavy. I've always had that like physical like outlet competitive side. Maybe I in college was doing like the keg stands with the push-ups. Now it's more about like doing the outdoor adventure activity versus having it wrapped up in that, and then like
Yeah.
maybe doing a little different type of like quality versus quantity if you're going to have the alcohol, or recognizing the need and benefit for a quality proteins versus just like day old Mike's bread, and whatever
Yeah.
you can get your hands on. So understanding and valuing the quality of the food is a big one, but also I was always that person who's like, I want to be the best, have the best grades. I want to be the best athlete, and I want to be the best partier, and I can sleep when I'm dead, and I want to do it all. And you can hang on to that for a bit, and
Yeah.
eventually it takes a toll on your adrenals and your hormones. And for me, I wish I'd known about like how you can measure. When you hear hormones, a lot of people think it's just sex hormones, but I'm talking about stress hormones because that is upstream of the sex hormones. So your
Yeah.
cortisol, your DHEA, because when you care about physical performance and repair and recovery, you need to know what's going on with your DHEA, which is kind of that whole androgen side of the equation, which is going to impact your testosterone and your muscle building repair capability. And had I understood anything about the cortisol, like the HPA axis, like how the pattern's supposed to look, and you should produce cortisol throughout the day and drop. But then also, I did not realize how addictive high cortisol can be in adrenaline. And you actually feel really good in those states. And so you just keep doing more of the things that hit that. And that's why people over exercise, because as we were kind of talking about, it is a more socially acceptable form of an addiction than
Right.
maybe drinking
Yeah.
or other drugs. And it is just as devastating on your body. It just, you might look okay from the outside, but you can tell when somebody's not okay on the inside from the outside. You cannot always tell from the outside that the inside, like the biochemical balance or mental stability, you can't always see that from the outside. And so a lot of times these people, myself included, you're getting accolades like, oh, you look great, you're crushing it, all the things. The inside can still be kind of a mess. And so I didn't even realize how tired I was because you just grind through it. That's how you just do it. And, when my kids were younger, I'd tuck them in for their naps and I would always crash with them, like to the point where you're like, I don't even know that, but it's just, that's all I knew. And then it wasn't until you start recognizing the importance of recovery or not overtraining or just balls to the wall 24/7. They're like, there is a piece, as that client was saying, like that totally resonated with me. There is a balance. You don't have to be at your 9 and 10 all the time. And I had an acupuncturist told me this. She's like, you got to find your 4, 5s, and 6s. You're always at an 8, 9, or 10. And she's like, why do you do that? And I'm like, well, why would you not? And so it's the once you hit your 40s, you start learning, oh, that isn't necessarily sustainable. And then that whole perimenopause concept, like that's what they're talking about, because they don't tell you in school when you're learning about sex ed topics that perimenopause means your hormones start shifting around age 35, anywhere from 35 to 50, and what that can look like. And when your stress hormones are off, if your cortisol and DHEA balance or just production is totally off, it's immediately going to impact your progesterone, which is your calm, I feel good, like I'm in a good spot, helps you sleep, or your estradiol, which also correlates with depression, bone density, just like being able to think cognitively. There's a lot of things you just never learn about that are absolutely impacted by your stress, which, as we talked about, physical, mental, emotional, all the things. And in perimenopause, especially, if you're overtraining, under recovering, you're taking care of parents, taking care of kids, taking care of your career, trying to like overdo it with your own stuff because that's the only outlet you've ever thought of or tried. is going to have pretty extreme consequences as far as, well, you're either going to get injured or have these like repetitive usage injuries, or just your body doesn't work right, or you're going to have these like hormone swings, or just feel like you're raging or crying or like whatever, fill in the emotion. It's going to be extreme, and nobody loves that, like the person experiencing it or the person around them. But you don't really like know that, oh, stress is like a major component of that, and all the factors that fall into that.
How do you tweak workouts and stuff like that with where they are in their cycle or anything like that? Is there any benefit to that? Can you comment on that?
Totally. Again, every person's different. If you're talking about somebody with a 28-day cycle, generally somewhere around like the day 4, day 1 being the first day of bleeding, around day 4-ish to 11-ish, give or take. Those are kind of your peak testosterone days, or days where if you can push a little harder, like if you're going to periodize or plan a training program around the cycle, those would be the days you'd intentionally do a little bit more. It's the back half of the cycle where you need that progesterone to come up, and your body needs more carbohydrates on that back half for all of that. And that's why a lot of people will have sugar carb cravings more on the backside, and your insulin sensitivity. A lot of things change. And so the back half of the cycle would be times where you would want to avoid over training. You want to emphasize maybe some intentional recovery, build in some more like mobility work or speed training where it's the speed focus, not the volume focus, or same thing with strength. It's more of the strength versus like endurance side of things where you're just doing a lot of volume. And, again, everybody's different because the whole stress load a person's under is going to impact how quickly they recover. So that's why you can have a team with the exact same workout, and some people adapt really well to it because that could be the perfect stress stimulus for their body, given what else they have going on. And if somebody else is going through a really stressful time, just has a lot of other balls up in the air or things on their plate, that same exact workout that was really effective for this person could be what it takes to put that next person a little bit over the edge and into the under recovered state where they're not having their best performance.
I know we need to wrap up soon. I've kept you longer than I planned on doing, so I appreciate your time. So, if a listener wants to work with you or dive deeper into your content, we talk about cortisol and all these things, but you're using a lot of hardcore deep testing that I'm familiar with, and I'm pretty impressed. So you really do get the fingerprint of the client. So I think you're doing great work out there. But yeah, so how do they find you? Where's the best place for them to start? They want to dive deeper in how do they find you?
Yeah, my website is mypeak365.com. That's my Instagram handle too. And I like to integrate information for people who want some of those, like you mentioned, like what are some meals like you can start playing with. I post recipes, just things to think about, like breathing, try this, videos. So there's lots of information there. And I do offer a complimentary consultation to people if they're like, hey, I do want to dig deeper into something. I'm not sure if this is the right fit, or could you guide me somewhere else? Yeah. People fill out some questions. I'm happy to meet to help figure out if it is a right fit, because it's not the right fit for everybody. Back to what we're talking about, people have to have a reason to want to do some of this stuff, because when you get the good results, you're going to have to do the good work too, right? And so you got to be, have a reason. You don't need to have the resources. You don't need to have the knowledge. That's where I help support people and hold them accountable. There needs to be a why though. And if I'm not it, I'm totally happy to connect people with other resources that might be what they're looking for.
I really appreciate it. And I love your life up there in Winter Park working. Thanks again for the time. Is there anything else you want to leave us with? Any other thoughts at all?
I would say if you're somebody who thinks you hate cooking, I thought I did too. And I thought it was like kind of lame. By accident, I found myself in culinary school. And that has been the biggest game changer for me, for having that understanding of it isn't just about working out more to get that, body composition you want. It's about working smarter, not harder. And a lot of that comes from eating real food. So you don't need to go to culinary school. You don't need to follow recipes, but just learning a few simple, effective ways to work in the kitchen can be so impactful for people. And that's like the biggest shift I see in people. I work with is how they can change their relationship with how they look at making meals as like a nasty to do item to something that can actually fall into that recovery bucket of something that they enjoy doing, whether it's solo, with somebody else, but thinking of it as nourishing your cells with what it needs to perform, to recover, to build faster, stronger, whatever your goal is, cleaner, smoother skin. It really starts in the kitchen. And so if you could just start by trying one new thing a week, it's not too big of an ask, and it's actually going to save you time and money on the back end. It's going to be so powerful, because it wasn't until I did culinary school and had to cut my training to about 10% of what I did at the time. But I also shifted to eating all real food because that's what we did in it. I was shocked that I stayed the same. And I was like, oh my God, I needed to be forced into like not having the time to do all the training because I never would have believed it.
You cut your training to 10% of what you were doing before.
Because I was overtraining. Yeah.
Yeah, but you cut it because you were busy in culinary school, I assume? You didn't cut it by choice, or did you?
Well, it was because I was in culinary school all day long, then would come home to kids, and then I'd have to study for all this stuff. Once they were in bed, rinse, repeat. So I went way down in my volume, and it was the best thing for me because I kind of got forced into trying something different. I'm like, okay, it's just 3 months. I can figure it out afterwards. I'm like, sure, I'm going to blow up. And I didn't. I stayed the exact same and felt way better energy.
Thanks again, Katie.
For sure.
I really appreciate you letting us pick your brain and everything. So, and people can find you at
anytime.
Tell me the name of
Happy
that.
to do it again, too.
What's the name again?
It's My Peak 365.
My Peak 365, and that's your Instagrams and all the webs and everything. That's where people can find you. So cool.
And my website. You got it.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot. And
check it out.
Everybody, thanks for listening. Have a great day.